instrument was, for the most part, the gravamen of it was written over 107 years ago, because we were founded in 1909. So the forefathers that structured the organization and therefore wrote the Constitution had in mind those things that contribute to the quality of life and what laws were in place that may be violated that would have an impact on the communities of color. Thus, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And you're probably aware of some of those landmark decisions. Perhaps the most famous is the Brown versus Kansas for the school desegregation that was effectively argued by who later became Supreme Court Justice Thurman. Thurgood Marshall. The basis for those arguments were really brought together, and a lot of people don't know that, by a former professor of law that Thurgood Marshall had at Howard, by an attorney. His last name was Houston. I want to say Charles. I think his name was Charles Houston. And so those planks, if you will, that he laid for Thurgood Marshall to argue his case have now become, they're the foundation for many civil rights arguments.
Have you read the whole thing? How long is it?
I'm pretty versed on it.
Yeah.
Because remember I told you we have the committees. There's 17 standing committees. So
underneath
in this Constitution.
Oh, okay.
There's 17 committees.
Okay. Got it.
It's set up very much like the U.S. Constitution would be, where you have the executive and then you have the operational.
Okay.
It's not really legislative.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it mimics that. So if you know a little bit about our regular Constitution, then you can kind of, I see how that works. As the first vice president of the branch, the the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Chicago South Side branch, the responsibilities of the vice presidents are delineated, and then all of the committee chairs are delineated. There is something, we don't have a board of directors. And the reason that we don't have a board of directors is, guess what? There's liability with boards of directors. And if you know of other not-for-profits that have board of directors, there's a little pushback because things that board does or things that organization does, the board can be held liable. That was determined, and so we have an executive committee.
Okay.
But they function like a board.
Okay, I see.
But we don't incur the liability.
Okay. So does each branch have their own committee, or is it like a bigger thing?
Each branch is exactly the same structure.
Okay.
This is from the national down, the national's a little different because they do have a board of directors.
Oh, okay.
But once it gets out to the branches, the national is a 501c3. The branches are all 501c4s, which is a little different. Okay. Little different in the tax code.
Okay.
That's why we don't have that responsibility.
Okay.
One of the reasons we don't have that. one of the things that really appealed to me in an earlier part of our conversation, we talked about process.
Mm-hmm.
I love it because it's structured. I can go to the book. I can find what I need. That most of the time will resolve arguments.
Okay.
So instead of building walls, we can now build bridges. And so prayerfully, whether it is with organizations that we are conducting investigations of complaints that have been sent to us for us to investigate, that they're violations, that's our premise.
Okay.
We want to build bridges, focus on our samenesses, put aside our differences, but love what the law says. What does it say? How should it be? And that's that's kind of the way that we roll.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that up. Yeah, that's helpful. I didn't know that.
Okay. We inform, we motivate, and when necessary, we agitate. That's the demonstration part. And many people, when they think of the NAACP and the active role that they played back in the 60s civil rights movement, they think of the agitation. They think of the demonstrations. There certainly were many, but our strong suit was the courts. One of the first really strong movements was the Birmingham bus boycott. There were the demonstration was that people, hey, we're boycotting the buses. We will walk rather than ride these segregated buses. The NAACP went to court to strike down those those laws that were imposed by the city of Birmingham, and I guess reinforced by the state of Alabama. And the walls came tumbling down. But most people think that it was done through the demonstrations and the bringing to the public awareness that this was unfair. Not the
you wish
case.
that wasn't, what everyone thought.
Not the case. It was a court order because there were federal monies that were used for the transportation. It gets very involved, but this was the argument, and they said, hey, you can't do that and receive this. You can do this, but you can't receive that. And so they looked, let them ride.
I know that you were talking with Debora as well. I read her rough draft of the article about media representation of the NAACP.
Yes.
And
that we need that.
That you want,
Oh, yes, we want that. Because we don't get that. There had been a time, did you remember the E.F. Hutton commercial? You don't remember that. Have you ever heard it referenced?
No, I don't even know what that is.
Okay. At one point in time, there was a brokerage firm that was highly touted for always being